Dallas Cowboys owner Jerry Jones has been selected as a finalist for the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 2017. The Cowboys have had mixed results under Jones, winning 3 Super Bowls back in the 90s after he bought the team in 1989. Since the glory days, the boys haven't had much success, going 500 since 97. Damian Woody in the house to help us with this conversation. How are we doing?
I'm good. How are you guys doing?
We're good. We're good. We're better now that you're here. But I want to start with Stephen A. on this subject.
Big boy! What up, baby?
Somebody woke him up. Stephen A., what do you think? Does Jerry belong in the Hall of Fame?
Well, I would say to you that depends. If you're going by Super Bowl championships, he was the owner when the Dallas Cowboys won 3 over a 4-year period. If you're going by that, cannot be argued. Jerry Jones is a Hall of Famer. If we are to look at the totality of your work, then we'd have to take into account the last 20 years. I'm going to repeat that. 20 years. 2-0. Dallas Cowboys, 7 losing seasons, 8 playoff appearances. That means they missed the playoffs 13 times, and only 2 playoff victories in 20 years. You talk about Hall of Fame, how about Hall of Shame? That's where Jerry Jones and the Dallas Cowboys belong over the last 20 years. Now, if you want to ignore that and gloss over that and look at the 3 rings that he achieved 20 years ago, and then you combine that with the fact that the Dallas Cowboys are worth, according to Forbes, $3.2 billion, that as of last month, that number was speculated to be anywhere between the $4 and $5 billion range, which is a 25% jump. And you want to look at the fact that they're #1 in terms of most valuable sports franchises in the world. If you want to look at that, and Jerry Jones deserves credit for that as an owner, then he's a Hall of Famer. You take the 3 Super Bowl rings and you take the value of the Dallas Cowboys franchise, because he is a hype machine, no question about it. You have to give him Hall of Fame. But I'd say if you take into account the last 20 years, it's Hall of Shame. And I'd also say to you that the value of the Dallas Cowboys, I think that has elevated with the value of the NFL. Because according to various publications, 27 of the top 50 most valued sports franchises in the world are NFL teams, which speaks to the growth of the NFL, which means that the Dallas Cowboys, although they're #1, they're sort of riding or piggybacking off that momentum that the NFL as a brand has built, and Jerry Jones and the Dallas Cowboys just so happen to benefit from that. We also have to remember that Tex Schramm used to preside over the Dallas Cowboys franchise, even though he wasn't the owner. He was the one who originally put them on television on Thanksgiving Day. He was the one that the Dallas Cowboys, the star in the helmets, the cheerleaders, he was the one that basically invented the mystique of the Dallas Cowboys. So Jerry Jones rode the coattails of that. Would I take Hall of Fame status from him? Again, to answer, it would depend. You're talking to me about what he did 20-plus years ago? Fine. If you're talking to me about what he did the last 20 years, hell no.
Let me break it down. I
just broke it down.
Well, I'm going to break it down even further, Stephen A. First of all, the riding the coattails of the NFL, or like a rising tide lifts all boats, right? But Jerry Jones had a lot to do with that rising tide. He's the one who spearheaded the campaign among the owners for the salary cap, which worked out very well for them. Simultaneously, he invented essentially the bonus system, which also worked out very well. His stadium is state of the art. That's the gold standard of football stadiums right now. Luxury boxes, all these things. It's Jerry Jones, Jerry Jones, Jerry Jones. Even football back in L.A., other than Kroenke, the guy who deserves the most credit for that at this moment, is Jerry Jones. He has 3 chips. That's Jerry Jones, right? Like, he owned the team while they won 3 championships. So those are all Hall of Fame credentials. From a more kind of subjective, kind of BS sort of sports writer's point of view, can you tell the story of the NFL without Jerry Jones? Nope. People say, are you a Hall of Famer as an owner? Can you tell the story without Jerry Jones? No, you can't. All those things say he's a Hall of Famer. Now, in terms of his lack of success over the last 20 years, here's his Achilles heel. And the question is, does this keep him out of the Hall of Fame, Damian? He hasn't fired himself as GM. He's the owner. He's a terrific owner and a terrible GM, and the worst part about him as an owner is he wouldn't fire himself. If it was anyone else as GM of that team doing the job he's done over the last 20 years, Jerry Jones, the owner, fires that GM. But since it's Jerry Jones, the GM, he doesn't fire himself. If anything keeps him out of the Hall of Fame, I think it's that.
Well, listen, much to the chagrin of Stephen A. Smith, who's sitting here messing around talking about, I don't know if Jerry Jones is going to be in the Hall of Fame. Absolutely. The title is contributor. It's not all about wins and losses. He does have 3 chips under his belt. It's about what mark did you leave on the game of football? And like Max just said, can we write at the end of the day, can we write the history of the league without including Jerry Jones near the top of the NFL? Absolutely not. From raising revenue from teams as far as TV money, raising the value of the teams all across the National Football League. He wasn't piggybacking any other owner. He was the one that was innovative. He was ahead of the curve as far as marketing, putting the Dallas Cowboys out front. That's all Jerry Jones. You cannot take that away from Jerry Jones as far as that's concerned. He's a contributor to the Hall of Fame. It's not like he's out there playing football games. He's the owner.
All right.
He has 3 chips.
Well, let me say this. Well, allow me to chime in, big boy.
Go ahead.
I'm not scared of you because I'm in Philly. I'm not in front of you today, so I'm not scared.
I see you didn't come to the studio to challenge me.
Here's the deal. First of all, you have to listen to the question, because if Mollywood, if I'm correct in hearing Mollywood, she asked me, should he be? Not whether or not he will be. There's no question that Jerry Jones is going to be inducted as a contributor. There is no question about that, considering that at least as it was the case 18 months ago, not only was his franchise valued at over $2 billion, or actually now it's over $3 billion, but it was also $500 million in any other NFL franchise, because the Patriots were second and they were $500 million less at $1.8 million, at least as far back as 2014. So we understand that Jerry Jones, in terms of his contribution to the game, like Max pointed out with the salary cap and bonuses and other things, not to mention the 3 Super Bowl rings for Dallas when he first arrived there as the owner in the early 90s. We get all of that. We understand that he will likely get in, because how can you deny him? There are people who are in the Hall of Fame that never have 1 Super Bowl ring. This man has 3. It cannot be denied. What I'm saying is, when you ask, should he be, I'm parsing it out. I'm dividing it. Not only was he not winning for the last 20 years, half the time he didn't seem to care. As long as the Dallas Cowboys were making money, as long as he was the hype machine personified and they got the attention and the ratings and all that came with it, Jerry Jones seemed absolutely content, at least at one point. It got to a point where people in Dallas were looking at him like, do you even care? Do you care that this team continues to lose? Do you care that your team stinks? Do you care that your team is just god-awful and somehow, some way, you just seem to promote them? Like, when I call a Dallas Cowboy fans the worst fan base in American history because of their delusional tendencies and habits, who do you think the ringleader of that all has been all of these years? It's that damn Jerry Jones, because Jerry Jones is the one that sits out there every year. It's his job to convince you that somehow we're going to be relevant, and usually they have not been, period.
Well,
I don't think that's Hall of Fame, but I know he's going to go in.
Well, let me ask you this. If we're going to go off of what you're talking about right now, should the late, great Al Davis, should he be held out? Or should he have discussion about being in the Hall of Fame? Because last I remember, his final few seasons of being the owner in the National Football League were terrible. Yeah. But there's no denying the contribution that Al Davis brought to the National Football League. So as far as I'm concerned,
I can answer that. I can answer that, big boy. I can answer that. You scared of the answer? You scared of the answer? You scared of the answer? I mean, you scared? Say you scared, big boy. You scared of the answer? Here's the deal. Al Davis, and I don't have his record in front of me, but Al Davis, if I recall correctly, didn't regress to the realms of irrelevancy for 20 years. Not 20. Not 20. What the Raiders in the Super Bowl back in 2002?
The Raiders were pretty pathetic in his last few years. Let's not get it twisted right now.
I said last few. Is a few 20?
It might be like 10, though.
I'm sorry, you're an intelligent brother, Damian Woody. I'm sorry, I thought few was like 3 or 4. I didn't know it was 20. It wasn't 20 years.
So wait a minute. So are you saying
2 decades?
So are you saying?
That's 2 decades.
So you're saying in 20 years the Dallas Cowboys have been irrelevant? There's a difference between not winning at all and not being relevant. Are you saying the Dallas Cowboys haven't been relevant in 20 years? Are you saying that?
Is that a trick question? Are you asking me? Have the Dallas Cowboys been irrelevant for the vast majority of 20 years? How many 8-8 seasons can you have? How many 6-10 seasons can you have? How do you have a star quarterback that you gave over $100 million to that has 2 playoff wins on his entire resume? Oh, by the way, when he got the contract, he had only had 1 playoff win on his resume. Are you kidding? Is that a trick question? You asking me?
Yeah, I'm
Are the
asking
Dallas
you.
Cowboys irrelevant? Please, they're the epitome of irrelevancy. The only thing that makes them relevant is headlines and their fan base because they're delusional and it's sickening. That's nothing about this football team that has been relevant outside of a couple of years ago. Nothing.
Stephen A., the Raiders did hit a lower bottom than the Cowboys. Like, the Cowboys, at least going into seasons, whether or not people are right or wrong, and it turned out most Cowboys fans are wrong most seasons, but at least on paper, there's reason to believe that the Cowboys can have an interesting year. The last 5 or 10 years of Al Davis's reign, going into the season, you look at the Raiders and you go, this is just terrible. Like,
what year did Al Davis pass away? What year did Al Davis pass away? Because I understand that from the Raiders haven't been relevant since 2003 until last year. I get that. But in 2002, they lost in the Super Bowl. The year before that, they lost a divisional playoff game. The year before that, they lost in a conference final.
You're going back 10 years, 15 years.
2001, 2000. Oh, wait a minute. 2003 to last year is 12 years.
Yeah.
I gave you 20. I gave you 20.
All right, but what I'm saying is
Cowboys.
when you take those 12 years, more than a decade is a long time, and with Al Davis, it was a decade plus. And you add the fact that he bottomed out worse than Jerry Jones has bottomed out. There was no hope seasons, and no one cared about the Raiders.
He did pass away in 2011, though, so it was less than a decade.
2011.
A little less than a decade.
2011 is less than a decade. Come on now. You can't compare that to the ineptitude that we witnessed from the Dallas Cowboys. And Al Davis said, just win, baby. The Dallas Cowboys were starving for attention and hoodwinked everybody, taking their money and everything else. Selling
by the way,
selling
one
that
more
they
to
were
your
going to be
point,
winning
Stephen A.
when they kept losing.
Stephen A.,
Are you kidding me? You can't compare that.
A little more
What?
support. Stephen A., a little more support for your argument. Jerry Jones, who I think does deserve to be in the Hall of Fame, ran off Jimmy Johnson. And Barry Switzer did not have he won 1 Super Bowl, but once Jimmy Johnson left, you could chart the demise of that franchise since then, and that was Jerry Jones' ego. Let's be honest.
I'd put Jerry Jones in a Hall of Fame because of the 3 Super Bowl rings he got 20+ years ago. Yep. That's but don't bring up the last. He better hide the last 20 years. He better hide them.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
Since '97, as I said earlier, they've gone 500.
Omit it from the records.
Let's leave it there,
Please.
gentlemen, okay?